Joining us right now with the Political Buzz is one of the funniest writers of the 1960s generation. He's the guy who makes fun of that 60s generation with more insight than anyone else. P.J. O'Rourke, he's the author of Eat the Rich, but his latest article in the Atlantic Monthly is called, Was Clinton Cool? And if there's a headline here, it's that Clinton was cool, but awfully vague when challenged on the facts. Let's talk about the contrast we just saw. P.J., thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, thank you. What do you
think of this contrast with this little reminder of the World War II generation with Nancy Reagan letting us sharing some of those incredibly well-written and beautiful letters from Reagan? What's the difference here between them and the Clintons besides class?
Yeah. Well, it's nothing is going to make my generation look good, and certainly Bill Clinton didn't help make my generation look good. That generation just looks much better than us, and the reason is very simple, because they still are better than us.
Well, you know, I was just thinking the other day that our generation grew up after World War II, when we grew up hiding under a little balsa wood desk because the nun said you got 15 minutes till the world blows up and you go somewhere. And it'll make a big difference in your life where you go, and afterwards, and then there was the whole period of for a lot of us, having deferment after deferment and dealing with the draft, and some people going and getting killed. We were either hiding from the Soviet bombs or hiding from our own government. Has Clinton just been hiding from himself, or how do you see his fitting into this thing?
I see him basically as the pudgy band geek who used to hang around down at the career counselor's office at high school going, y'all got any of those Fulbright scholarship, Rhodes Scholarship thingies, you know, I can have my mom fill out?
You mean he's a fraud?
Yeah. Well, it was very interesting to go to interview him back when he was running for president the first time. I went with Hunter Thompson, Jan Wenner, myself, not that I counted particularly, but a whole bunch of us from Rolling Stone went out to interview.
That sounds like a bar joke in itself.
It does, really. Yeah, where are we going with this? You know, and it really, I mean, it was like for the first time, one of our generation was going to be president, and he turns out to be the band geek. You know, I mean, the first thing we did, we said right off the bat, we said there is a question that no candidate for president has really ever adequately answered, and we want to know, which one was your favorite Beatle? And Clinton just looked blank, you know? And then, I mean,
well, he gave the girgirls' answers, not the guys' answers.
He gave the girls' answer.
Right.
It was Paul McCartney, his favorite. Who else? I mean, of course, his favorite Beatle was Paul McCartney. I suppose Ringo. I mean, Ringo. The country cried out for somebody who liked Ringo best, I guess, and George Harrison would have been a worry. But Paul McCartney, you know. And I went right downhill from there.
That's because Paul bit his lower lip, just like Clinton does.
He did, yeah. Little chipmunk cheeks.
Let me ask you, on the serious point, has our generation failed? I mean, Meredith, who's been on this show a lot, writes a book called First in His Class. He was the first of our generation to make it to the big house, but is he a failure? Is he a failure for all of us?
Oh, I think so, absolutely. I mean, our failure as a generation and his failure as a person, pretty much identical. I mean, we are just the most morally flabby, sort of worthless, self-indulgent, self-obsessed group of people. I mean, I know I spend all my time thinking about myself, and Bill obviously spends all of his time thinking about himself, and one hates to think what Hillary spends her time thinking about.
Well, you've raised an interesting point. You portray him not as a hip 60s guy who had idealism and joined the Peace Corps and all those good things, or even as a flower child. You portray Bill Clinton as sort of a sick, seedy 1950s kind of guy, death of his salesman, caught cheating on his wife, kind of just basically seedy, not a very hip guy at all.
Well, yeah, I don't know, because I mean, the whole.
Well, you wrote it, damn it.
Yeah,
what do you mean you don't know? You just wrote it. That's what we're talking about.
I've got 60s Alzheimer's, you know. No, actually, I think he was quite hip in a sense. I mean, that was the hip generation. Yeah, we were really idealistic as long as, you know, that was a good way to get girls, you know. I remember going out and demonstrating, you know, getting tear gassed for my beliefs, you know, and saying, wow, sunshine, you know, we'd better double up in the shower, get this tear gas off. We have to save Earth's resources, you know. I mean, no, I don't think there's anything inconsistent about being part of the 60s generation and also being sleazy, you know.
Well, just think about what he's known for. He's going to go down in history as the guy that passed welfare reform. There's a 60s idea.
Well,
He's the guy who balanced the budget. I mean, these are kind of
that is kind of interesting. That is kind of interesting. No, he had that Squaresville. The thing that's important to remember about the 60s is the great majority of us weren't long-haired fools. The great majority of us were short-haired fools. You know, and there was always that square type hanging around. I mean, he's high school government. You don't need to ask yourself who Clinton is. He's the kid who was president of the student council.
That's all you need to say. You know, you were so, PJ, the kind of guy that would go to law school in the 60s, the kind of guy that would run for student government.
The kind of guy who would...
what we had. We had words I can't even use for those kind of guys. They were connivers. They were everything but the 60s.
He's the guy who married the girl who did the law school homework for him. That's who he is.
Oh, you've got it nailed. Well, the thing is, I guess the only thing I ever saw about Clinton where I absolutely believed every word he was speaking was honestly true, and I'm going to flip a little bit here, was when he was doing one of those shows, what's it, V1 or whatever it's called, one of the music networks, and he's going through all the albums, the old beat-up, old, big albums, 33 1/3 albums with, like, Meet the Mamas and the Papas, all my favorite music. And I actually did, I hate to admit it to an audience out there, I believed it. This is one thing I believe. I think he honestly, at least at this point, really did like that music. I guess that's how I know he's sort of the control group. That's when Clinton tells the truth. He really did like the music. Everything else doesn't seem as clear to me.
Well, they did name their kid Chelsea, and if they'd had more kids, I wondered if they would have used other neighborhoods in London, like Shoreditch. But anyway, no, I think Clinton told the truth a lot, as all good liars do. I come from a family of car salesmen. I know about telling the truth. And the secret to being a really good liar is to tell the truth 99% of the time. I believe he didn't inhale. I can see the guy.
But you know the motive. What was your theory on the motive?
Oh, it was, that sort of narc-like, it was just what he said it was. I mean, he didn't want to be in technical violation of the law, and there he is, cross-legged on the shag carpet, doing one of those fake narc inhales,
Are you sure he wasn't inhaling just to be cool? Pretending to be inhaling so he could pretend to be cool?
Oh, he was pretending to inhale so he could be cool and not actually inhaling so he wouldn't get caught later.
So the one time in his life where he does tell the truth, everybody assumes he wasn't.
Oh, absolutely. That's what he gets. Sorry.
Rolling Stone has made a hero out of Clinton in many ways. Jan Wenner loves him. He's a big Clinton supporter, gives him a lot of money. Why do guys like Jenner or whatever his name is, why do they like Clinton? Why do they think he's their cool hero?
It really is. I mean, it falls into the general category of liberal mysteries to me. I mean, the idea seems to be to somehow get everything you want in life, do exactly what you want, and yet still feel that you are, in a way, Mother Teresa because you think good thoughts, I mean, this is no offense to Jan. Personally, this is an indictment I can bring against my entire generation. I mean, that has been us from the time that we were under the desk hiding from the missile crisis. I was not under the desk. I just want to clear that up. I was using the Cuban Missile Crisis to try and get the girl who was my lab partner in biology class to do it.
Okay. We're going to come back and talk about George W. and PJ when we get back. More on George W. from PJ. We're going to be back with Clinton's final I Love You tour. You're watching Hardball.
When was the last time you saw the world and felt that it, for once, revolved around you? When was the last time you watched an eagle fish for salmon, rode a glass-dome train, or saw a bear from your balcony? And when was the last time you witnessed Mother Nature recreating herself? Holland, America, it's time.
They thought the election was over, the Republicans did. By the time it was over, our candidate had won the popular vote, and the only way they could win the election was to stop the voting in Florida. He did a great job.
We're back with a political buzz with P.J. O'Rourke. P.J., we've just heard just now, today in the Palm Beach Post in Florida, that they've gone out as a newspaper on their own and recounted all the ballots in Miami-Dade, and those 10,000 ballots that everybody keeps screaming about they want it counted. Turns out that Gore lost 6 votes after they counted those 10,000 hanging chads and dimples. Do you think that's going to shut up the critics or what?
Oh, of course not. But big surprise after Elian Gonzalez that Miami-Dade wouldn't go for Gore. The other thing is, wasn't that a Democratic majority on that election commission that shut down that vote? I mean, why don't these top Democrats listen to their own foot soldiers? These people
why do you think they're stirring the fire up? Why do you think they keep, even with this new evidence, I don't think they're going to stop these protests scheduled for inaugural day with Sharpton and Jackson. They're still going to be protesting. They won't be mentioning the latest counts from Florida.
It's fine with me. Let him protest. You know, I'm not one of those sissy Republicans, you know, playing squash at the Harvard Club. I mean, I don't care how we won. You know, my feeling is win ugly, that's fine. Let the healing cease.
I had something else I wanted to talk about. I know what it is now. It's Clinton and leaving town and the way he's doing it. Is this a kind of I always think of Jimmy Durante going from Spotlight to Spotlight, but that's obviously not a 60s or a boomer reference. That's an older reference. But I find the guy's departure, this endless spiking and endless victory laps, something else.
Aging actress on endless farewell tour. You know, I think this will go on for years. You know, anything, as far as I'm concerned, as a Washington resident, anything that gets him out of town is fine with me. You know.
Let's talk about the new reigning monarch of our country, the democratically elected George W. Bush, or at least electorally elected George Bush.
He's in there anyway.
Right, he's there. As you point out, anyways, good. You know, close butt cigar in this case. What do you make of this guy? Is he hip? He's the same age as the president. And me? What do you make of this guy?
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there must have been a lot of stuff going on in the 60s that I just missed, like the president, like the current president, like the guy that was running against the current president. I mean, I'm trying to picture these guys. The way you're supposed to understand people is to picture them in your own high school. Because I picture George W. Bush and Al Gore in my high school. I picture them going to Kent State, not Yale and Harvard, you know?
Yeah.
And I can picture them at Kent State about 1970. You know, George in a real National Guard unit shooting at Al, right?
You know what I think of both of them? They both sat at the jock table in the cafeteria, but neither one was a jock. They were pseudo-jocks.
Yeah.
They hung around the right guys, but they weren't the right guys necessarily.
The manager on the wrestling team, you know.
Well, Clinton won his Rhodes Scholarship by being the manager on one of the athletic events at Georgetown.
And he played the saxophone because the tuba had already been taken. That's my theory.
Let me ask you about George W., because he does cause a lot of trouble with people. I think he's got a wistful side in private that's even ironic, which is hard to say about a guy like him, but I think he's better than he looks, and certainly better than he talks. He seems to have a problem in that area.
Yeah, he's not a good public speaker, but then again, of course, most people aren't. I mean, we're in the profession, you know, we're moderately articulate. But you put most people up in front of a microphone, they're going to look a lot worse than George W. And I think the American public senses that. The American public is willing to forgive bad public speaking, especially when they've seen so many bad things done by people who were good public speakers. So I don't think that's a real problem. But the proof will be more than ever with this guy in what he does over the course of the next couple of years. He's definitely not going to be able to, like the previous president, talk his way out of everything he does.
Do you think he's going to avoid having a special counsel in his whole 8 years as president? If he
Can't be done anymore. Can't be done anymore. You know, the gloves are off. We're in an era of ugly politics, which is very good news for you and me. It keeps us employed.
I'm not so sure that's true. P.J. O'Rourke, you're a funny guy. I sat with P.J. one night, and I laughed at you for 2 hours at some Republican event. I forget it was. You went through the federal budget, and you told us how we were wasting every nickel of it. Anyway, thank you, P.J. O'Rourke.
You're very welcome.
Forget, you can get all the political buzz delivered by email. Sign up for our free daily briefing. It's called hardball.msnbc.com. We'll be right back. You're watching it, Hardball.